Moi moi. Good morning, Polarconf. Ah, finally. You're all awake. Good. Good. So, who was at the party yesterday evening? You liked it? So I want to thank the people from Go4 for that, and also for Isadora for taping this wonderful movie for me on the internet now. So now I'm famous again. I thank you for that. Where is she? She's not here. So my partner in crime seems missing, and Alexander is not here either apparently. So yeah. But then yeah. So this is what happens when you party hard, right? So we went a little bit dancing. So thank you for the DJ, thank you for the food, and thank you for the great networking that we had yesterday evening. To the order of the day. Yeah, you just missed it, man. All right. So, welcome to 1984. Big Brother is watching you. Everybody read the book or at least heard of it? The reference is pretty easy. I mean, the thing in George Orwell's book with the dystopian society was that everybody was being watched and that there was a full control on everything that people did. And this is exactly where I want you to focus on for the next hour, is that you can take full control of your security posture in your Azure environment. Is anybody here today who's sitting here anyhow impacted by security? And I do mean that they do it on a daily basis. All right, at least I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 people. All right, are you using Security Center? Anybody never seen Security Center? Everybody's seen Security Center. Oh, that's good. So probably you won't learn a lot then, I hope. You will, but yeah. So Azure Security Center is watching your back because it's a monitoring thing that actually gets enabled pretty easy. But I'm going to show you some things that you may or may not know. Let's go over it. Okay. So who am I? I'm Mike Martin. I'm one of the 2 Belgians. I think we're only 2 this time. Yay, Belgium represent. I'm one of the 2 Belgians being back here at Polarconf. And I'm pretty happy to be here. I work for Microsoft. I used to be a technical evangelist. Now they demoted me to a CSA. It's a joke, but I like the technical evangelist title a lot better. But what I do is I try to persuade people. No, that's a bad word. I try to bring over my passion to people of this one platform that we all love so much, because elsewhere you wouldn't be here, and that's called Azure. Right? I've been an Azure MVP before this. Was very grateful to be among the stars that are sitting here too, and I'm still grateful that I can still sit among these stars and talk to you people. If you want to reach out to me, you probably see me yesterday on Twitter already, because apparently I took the interwebs very hard with the Polarconf hashtag. So, but you can reach out to me on TechMike2Cakes. I'm also on LinkedIn. If you want to reach out to me business-wise on any questions, just shoot me a mail at mymart@microsoft.com. Before I get started in depth on Security Center, let's take a look at what we see at Microsoft as a security reference model. We have a solid foundation where we work on, and if you want to know really deep more about everything which is related to security in Azure, it's a lot. You should ask, I don't see him, you should ask Carl, he's an expert in that. I have a couple of talks on security, elsewhere I wouldn't be doing the Security Center thing, but there's secure DevOps, there's all the security measures that you can put in place, not only Security Center, but a lot of things that you can enable out of the box in Azure, or even by using third-party applications. And then we have the things on the layer of identity and management, access management, network security containment, application code, DSDL, something thoroughly forgotten. Yeah. But on top of that, we have the security operations. And this is where most of you people are probably impacted, because you have to monitor, you have to maintain a secure deployment, you have to maintain a secure flow with with your developers, but you also have to make sure that incident response is being done correctly, that you provide correct feedback to your end users. In the days of GDPR, you have to be compliant with everything. So this is all coming down to you guys, and this is a little bit the reference model that we have where all this comes in place. So let's get started. So first of all, we have what we call the cloud kill chain model. Typically, and that's a fear, if you're doing it wrong, typically there's a fear that you expose a lot in any cloud model. If you're doing it correctly, there's no risk. Unless you have some things that you've forgotten, then it's just a human interaction thing that is gone wrong. Typically, it starts off in the code, not in the systems behind it. So it's always a human part that's going wrong there. And it could be insecurely configured, insecurely coded. There could be vulnerabilities in things that you're using today, like third-party NuGet packages, for instance, in your applications, or third-party the backend services that you're using that provide vulnerabilities. And of course, there's the human factor that people are doing the wrong from the inside or from the outside. And then you provide access, or it's by means of direct brute force attacks or hacking into your network, doing injections on your web applications, trying to steal your identities, which is also a very nice one, and brute forcing and putting the thing down. And then you have lateral movements. Once people get inside of your applications, inside of your solutions or whatever you're deploying, they can have access to the lower components of your environment. The actions that are being done there, and the typical gain that a malicious person has is typical either data loss, making sure that you go down and go bankrupt, or that they steal your data and that they put it on the internet for sale. Or sometimes it's both too, right? So the goal of Security Center is actually to provide, first of all, to strengthen your security position and to strengthen your security posture. So getting an insight on what you're doing wrong and what you're doing right. We have that by means of secure score and policies and compliancy. And next to that, we have protection against threats, whether it's for cloud native, whether it's for servers, whether it's for databases and storage. We have protection there, and even mitigations afterwards. So it's not only trying to protect, but also giving you the ability to action and score on that. Now, for those who paid attention yesterday, this was mentioned already a couple of times. We talked about, where is he? Marcel, you talked about Monitor yesterday. Yeah? Now, Monitor is the aggregate of everything, which is coming back to log analytics, something we used to call OMS and System Center Advisor in the past, and all these funky marketing names. But the thing is that all the data that you're storing in Security Center is also being put inside of a log analytics workspace. Now, that's the beauty of it. If you have that data, you put it all in the same workspace, you can do aggregated queries on those by means of custo queries, and you can actually have your own insights and create a little bit of your own intelligence based upon all the aggregations that you have of different insights. I'll show you what I mean when we go into the demoing part. If we look at how Security Center is built up, we have the gathering of all the different logging systems that we have. That could be the Windows event logs, that could be the Linux event logs, that are the audit logs and the diagnostics logs that we have from the Azure environments, even on-premise, even in private clouds, even in clouds that are living by our neighbors or by our competition, like Azure, like AWS, not Azure, that's not our competition, like AWS, like Alibaba, so you can interact with those. Everything's being put by everything's being put through a normalization engine, which kinds of either enrich it with IP data, geotagging, GPS data, and that's being put down then in a log analytics form, as you can see here. And you can easily interact with that on things like Excel and Power BI. So even for the non-techies, they can have a report for like an executive summary. You can easily build those things. And on top of that, we have then the threat intelligence and the security analysis, and this is the AI that comes to work. So we have a machine learning model behind that is actually monitoring constantly, and that's changing itself constantly. And by means of the patterns that it detects, it actually will tell it's a brute force attack, it's an RDP attack, it's a DDoS attack, these things. And that could be passed. As a security center then delivers a dashboard. So it gives you insights, recommendations. So it works together a little bit like with tools like Advisor. And we have prioritization of alerting, we have curation of alerting, and we have investigation tools. Now the investigation part, that's a funny thing. There's this new kit in the Azure environment called Sentinel. I'm going to talk about that a little bit at the end of my talk. But that has taken over a couple of these roles already. There's a difference in skewing. So we have different prices. First of all, it's free to start off. Everything which is policies, assessments of your environment, and the recommendations are free. Yeah? And partner solutions are also free integrated. At least use those. Because the recommendations that you get, it will give you a better insights on what either you or your developers are deploying inside of Azure. Yeah? And that gives you, that can be anything. That can be databases that are being exposed, but also for your administration, enabling MFA and stuff like that, all these things will rise. Now, then why would I pay if a lot of those things are free? Well, all the cool stuff and all the funky stuff and all the things that are really useful are unfortunately in the paying SKU. And it's a $15 approximately, depending on the region where you are, what you're going to pay. So depending in Europe, it will be something like, I don't know by heart, but it's $15 per node per month. And you get a lot for that back. Especially the threat intelligence part is very cool, and the advanced threat detection with the new services that are being updated on a regular basis. These are really useful because you get automated alerts from those things. You can have very good insights on those things, and you can immediately take actions on those things. So what are the decisions to make? First of all, the tier, that's the pricing part. The workspace where you want to deploy. As I already mentioned, it's a log analytics workspace. My advice, if you want to have a solution overview, put everything together in the same workspace. But there's theological discussions and theological or religious contradictions in there sometimes. It depends on what you're really aiming for. Sometimes you just want to keep your security data separate from everything else and don't aggregate with some of the other data. You can limit your data, but at least if you have the choice to change the default workspace. That's the one thing that you already have. Then you also have to decide on the amount of data that you want to see. So there's also the types of data you want to go for all in, or do you only want to see the common data, which is very similar to a very light set, or none at all, because you can also choose for that. And then you disable the security event collection for your environment. You want to auto onboard. So if you deploy new services, do you want to auto onboard them? That's also a feature that you can enable, disable. And then all the features that you're going to use. Like, do you want a JIT enablement? You want to do the advanced threats on storage. You want to do, what else we have? Can't think of it right now. And you want to make sure how you receive your notifications when you get alerts. So you don't always want to have a monitor, but you also sometimes you want to have an SMS. You want to have a mail that you receive. These are the things that you can have. How do you onboard? Well, there's two things that you can do. If you do the automatic provisioning of the monitoring agent, which is the same as the log analytics agent, so the same as the Azure Monitor agent. That can be automatically onboarded once you pull this little switch where the data collection is being set, automatic provisioning of the monitoring agent. And this will put on the Azure VMs that you deploy immediately into Security Center, and then from there out they're being monitored. If you don't provide an antivirus yourself, Windows Defender will pop in there as the first line of defense and monitoring for the malicious encounters with viruses and all these things. Yeah. You can also manually deploy them, especially when you're doing on-premise thingies, or when you want to onboard like third-party clouds. You can also use them there and point them back to the workspace that you want to use them for. And once that's done, you can get started with the default dashboard. And this is where where it all starts. You get some insights. It takes a while before all the data is being loaded, so you have to keep that in mind. For some things, it takes a little bit longer than for other things, so you need to wait at least a couple of minutes or hours even. Okay, so that's the first thing. So let's take a look what we have when we onboard it. Oh, that's not it. So typically, when you open up a security center, there you go. You see these things, policy and compliance. You have the resource hygiene that you can take a look at, and this is all your resources held by severity in the networking stack, and all the alerting, which is the threat protection. You have all the different features here split up into logical components, where you have the advanced features, which we pay for, like adaptive application controls, just-in-time VM access, adaptive network hardening, and file integrity monitoring. And we have, for the threat protection, we have two features, one with security alerts and one on a map that plots out all the things. And then we also have this one thing called automation and orchestration, where you can either react to some of the features that are being enabled, and where you can do automation stuff. I'll show some of these things later on. If you want to change, and if you're on board, well, typically you're always on board on a free stack. And if you want to start off by using the full-blown version, it starts off by a free trial. So at least you can see whether it's worth your bang for buck. Yeah? And you can change these on a subscription level. You can change these on a log analytics level. It's pretty easy to change the pricing and the settings of these things. If you go into the subscriptions, like for instance, my subscription, it's willing to load. There you go. You can easily switch between the tiers, and you will automatically see where that pricing is being applied, and you can disable it on the different things. So if you only want to go for, let's say, PaaS SQL service, but everything else that I'm not interested in, then just disable it for everything else. And just by a flip of the switch, it takes a couple of seconds before all the resources are being updated, and then you don't pay anymore on a billing perspective. You can disable these per service. They can send some other settings, like you want to enable integrations with Windows Defender ATP. For those who are using Windows Defender ATP, there's a tight integration that can flow back the entire chain of interactions that are being done by Windows Defender ATP, and you will see back all the alerts inside of Security Center. Also for Cloud App Security, there's also some interactions there. The type of data that you want to collect, this is what I was talking about earlier. So yeah, this is where you select either auto-provisioning for your agents if you want to onboard VMs automatically. And the workspace configuration, this is where you can change it. So by default, Security Center creates one on its own, but you can easily change it. My advice is change it at the beginning. Don't take too long, because else you have to do some magic to move all the data out of there. And have a good design in advance before you start doing these. And then the additional raw data that you want to store. So you can store all the events of Windows for Windows security and app blockers. You can set just on the common level, or you can have none at all and a minimal set. And here you have your email configuration. So from here out, you can say how you want to be notified if there's any issue which is very high prioritized. Okay. So if you want to have a good notification, you can either say, I want N mail, N SMS, so I want to be sure that I have some things. Now, it doesn't mean that if you get alerts, that you cannot integrate it back to a system that can do the notification for you. Let's say that you create a flow and that you put the notification into something else. Like, for instance, I don't know, you have a chatbot where that pops up in Teams, for instance. You could actually build that, right? So there's interactions that you could enable here. And then you can also have a choice where do you want the only, if you want to send email notifications for high severity alerts. I prefer those. And also send email notifications to the subscription owner, so that way they can be put aware of the issues that there are too. If you want to onboard, other environments like AWS or your own private environment, come on. You have here the install agent part, where you can actually download the agents. And this is also some getting started for how to work with some of the things like for non-Azure computers. From here out, it's actually a wizard that will put you through what you need to do, what workspace you want to deploy into, and how do you want to cope with it. Is that readable, by the way? Because I didn't ask, but can you read it? Also in the back? Okay. That screen is kind of funky, right? Unfortunately, for some reason, this keeps on running. I had some yesterday already some issues. I thought it was going to be better, but so if some of the things are not working, it probably is because I'm on the Microsoft portal and not on the client portal, because we get some dogfooding. Actually, if you look at it, we have, I don't know if you paid attention, if you were into the portal yesterday, but new icons were released. We have a new, fresh look on the icons. And we also don't have the bar anymore fixed. So I don't know where you guys are going to like this, or yes or no. We have this as a dogfooding, so don't shoot me if this feature doesn't come to your portal. Right. Let's talk features. Any questions, by the way, so far? Nobody? Okay. So what can you do? First of all, we have the Linux and Windows server threat management. By default, you have the antiviral interaction. You can also take a look on the protection of some other stuff. And it works for both Windows and Linux environments. So there's an agent for Linux that you can onboard very easily. There's a full documentation set available on how you can do that. There's also cloud-native services from that. So there's an integration today with Azure Web Apps, but also there's new features coming for Kubernetes and for Azure containers. There's going to be some road mapping. They will probably foresee some container image scanning. There's a lot of things on the roadmap there, and it's looking really promising. So for those who are doing container management and you're using today tools like Aqua or what's the other one called? Sorry? Yeah, twist lock, thank you. Some features will be coming natively probably inside of our environment, right? That doesn't mean that you don't have to work with those third parties, but we at least give you some highlights there. There's other features there too that you can highlight from. And what we're really investing on heavily is the data platform, data services protection. So we started off with SQL Server, that was the first, and all the features that you see in SQL Server today from a management perspective, so you have these cool reports that generate GDPR reports. You have these threat analytics reports that you can highlight from within SQL Server. These are also coming to MySQL and Postgres. So there are a lot of features that they're really trying to put everything on the same level, and which is a good thing. But we also see the same things coming to Cosmos DB, for instance. Cosmos DB also has a threat analytics part. So when there's targeted attacks to your Cosmos DB environment, you will also get the notifications if you enable this switch. And we did the same for storage accounts. So storage accounts are also very in the past, it was harder to protect them. We now have, if there's access from areas that you don't know, you will get a mail, and it's all by just a flip of the switch, and they all work on the same level. So let me show you how these things work. So we go to, first of all, I'll take a look at our secure resource management. So when we take a look at computers and apps, you will see that there's support for VMs, that we also support scale sets, if there are any, and for making it a little bit more sexy, I'm gonna put all the subscriptions in here. It will take a while before everything loads, but that's okay. And this one won't load for some reason, unless now it says I will. Okay. So we go to the computer and apps thing, and here you see the support for everything which is today available. So we have VMs and computers, so you can easily switch between the views on the different resources that you have. So we have this for VMs and computers. We have this for scale sets. And you get recommendations per type. So in this case, for instance, if I want to take a look what's going on here, I see that the agents are reporting back that a monitoring agent should be installed. So Security Center also looks at the resources that are not being protected. And from there out, you can easily, on all the protected features, you can easily give one-click remediations. So from there out, you can just say click, and it will deploy or harden or take the correct action to make sure that the security score will be updated, that that failure or flaw that you have and that vulnerability that you have will be taken away just by a single click. So if I take a look at my own PCs, because I cannot do it in these, so if I take a look at this one, I think there's a one click here, should be. Is it? No, there isn't. Then I should be taking the other one, probably. Maybe one, come on. Oh, unfortunately. Here it is. So I can hear out, this one doesn't have the monitoring agent on my virtual machine. I can just say, fix it, and then it will just guide you through the single click fix, but this one is already being managed by. We then take a look at, which is in preview now, the containers. We actually have recommendations on anything that is container related, and containers are a hot topic, I know. Everybody has something to do with containers, whether it's just Docker containers, whether it's running Kubernetes or even Mesos, DCOS, or whatever you have. You will actually see that there's a lot of recommendations coming out. Like for instance, this cluster. If we open this one up, you will see that there's a bad practice. Oh, that wasn't the intent. A bad practice is not to use RBAC roles within the Kubernetes service. Should enable this. This will highlight you the issue. Also, security policies on Kubernetes services aren't being enabled. You should make sure that you do those things. So a lot of information that is related to Kubernetes will pass through these events. Even for the container solo containers, so the container instances, you get some of the information back. Like for instance, there's some container vulnerabilities found. And if we then take a look, if it's willing to load, come on. Ah, this blows. There we are. Then you see, let me make it a little bit bigger. Here you see the threat that it has. So there's some openings here. There's threat to data exfiltration, data spillage, and account breaching. Review the list of failed rules. What's the failed rules? There's no commendations here. Okay, I can take action immediately, and immediately will be put inside of the log analytics where I get the query that is being. Okay, this is weird. It should be getting the query back with all the rules that are coming out of that container instance. For some stupid reason, this is failing on me. Okay. Anyway. Now, I know you all are IT pro related, so you probably have some kind of an affinity with PowerShell, for instance. There's a lot of management that you can do with PowerShell also on a security center. You can onboard all your assets, whether it's resources, setting pricing tiers, configure data collection, how you want to manage with those. Contact configuration can all be managed by means of PowerShell. Also, the policy management can be done. I'm going to go into that in a couple of seconds. The threat monitoring, how to get the alerts, you can get them with PowerShell, and also setting some prevention capabilities like the JIT policies and apply and removing the JIT policies. There's some other programmable capabilities that there is foreseen. There's the API, and go over that in just a little bit more. Also, ARM templates. So you can set the settings by means of ARM templates. There's some things still missing, like resource health coverage. But you can call them out with something else, which we call the Intelligent Security Graph, which is part of the Microsoft Graph. You can integrate with existing workflows and tools, and a lot of you probably have heard about that Sentinel thing, that's an automated onboarding capability. But you can also use the same API, the endpoint API that you have from Security Center in combination with event hubs, for instance, and then push them back, like to say Splunk, or Datadog, or whatever data aggregator and log aggregator you have. So for those who are using any of these tools, I think even for Splunk, there's a Monitor plugin that can immediately put this information back inside of Splunk itself. And I even think they have a default set of templates that can visualize from within that environment. The thing is that you do need an event hub to push everything over. So you need to set these things up. You need to set the data that you want to push over there. You need to make sure that you have a good connection between the things. And it doesn't always work with hosted Splunk either, if I'm not mistaken. So we discussed that yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. I keep a minute unless you get a picture. So if we look at something I already mentioned earlier. After you've done all these integrations and after you've done all these things, you also want to make sure that you get the correct management and that you also gather all the other stuff, like what you want to do, what are the policies that I want to keep maintain with those things, what are the ways that I want to work with it, how do I want to what are the compliancy rules that I need to apply to, and am I complying to them on a matter of security? And for those things, we have this part called privacy and compliancy. It comes together with the secure score, so this will actually gather all the information, but the most important thing here is the policy part. Now, this has changed over time. So in the past, it used to be a separate policy that you had to set in Security Center. Now you can just apply the rules that Sjoukje, where she talked about yesterday in our governance talk, because all the things that you need to set are being now managed through Azure policies. So you can set all these things. And as you can see, it actually looks a little bit like the blueprinting and governance and policy environment that you had yesterday with the same level of management group and the same level of subscription management parts. And from here out, you can easily start activating all your different parts. You can apply the policies that you want. And as you can see here, you need to do a specific policy assignment, and you can edit it completely from within Security Center itself. So once it loads, you can set the scope. You can set some exclusions from resources that you don't want to go, the assignment ID, and then you have all the different parameters for all the different policies that you want to set. Like, for instance, system updates on virtual machine skill set should be installed. Is that what do you want to do with it? How do you want to cope with it? So you can choose your type of wearing it out. Audit if it not exists, so that way it will be reported back in Security Center, or disable it. And then that way it will not be covered anymore. So you can easily arrange this for your own convenience, so that way you get all the information that you want to see instead of the defaults that are in there. By default, everything is on. And as you can see, there's a long list. And why is my mouse not moving anymore? Oh, come on. I think my browser died on me here. Okay, do a refresh. Waiting. Am I still on the internet here? Yep. Back. Can I try it again? Nope. Let's just open it again. Yeah, man. So something is hijacking my browser now. Cool. That's not really nice. Oh, while this is trying to restore, try again. On the regulatory compliance, there's some default things in there, and one of the cooler things we have, and there was an announcement last week, is this thing. So we do cyber information systems benchmarking, so SIS benchmarking, and they're open to comments. So if you want to work together with those people and you want to add some additional information, you can actually do that now because they're open for comment. It's just a little bit like GitHub. They allow comments and changes. Now, what this thing does, it actually checks whether all of the compliance controls have been well maintained by means of the score that you get. So let's say, for instance, identity and access management. One of the main rules that they uphold is MFA should be enabled on all the account with owner permissions. Now that's actually something we enforce ourselves, especially when you're doing today as a CSP. We enforce you to become MFA enabled because that's a hard requirement now. But these things will actually check and give you a full list. You can actually download this report, and this will give you a full standard report of all the things that you have. If you take a look at this, you will actually see that all the information that you gathered is being nicely put inside of a nice report which you can read out and that you don't have to worry about online, and that you can actually highlight some of the things and give this to your management or whatever you have. It also works for, here it is, I was on this page. It also works for, by default, out of the box for, this is not funny, yeah. We also have default compliancy regulation checking for PCI and for ISO, and I think that's the most important part for most of the people, as you can see here. And they're being set up the way ISO reporting is being done, and we just cross-link it with the features that we have within Azure Security Center and the data we gather. So like, for instance, organization of information security, there must be a segregation of duties, and this will be reflected back in. There should be more than one owner assigned to your subscription, and a maximum of 3 owners should be designated for your subscription. These are where we are failing, so we need to make sure that this is being set up correctly. Asset management, the same thing. All the information classification that you have, you need to make sure that you set the vulnerabilities on your SQL server. Should be remediated, for instance. And then from there out, you can immediately click through, and then from there out, you can also start acting on the way you should manage with those things. For instance, here, you can do a remediation here. And I can set a security check, and I do a scan and vulnerability assessment on my database, for instance, and that's the minimum that you need to do. So the regulation thing are really useful. I talked about the enablement of advanced threat analytics. Now I'm going to show you that for a second. For instance, say we want to enable advanced threat management on SQL databases. You can do these from within the resource itself. So we have, no, it's on this is on the SQL level. I mean, on SQL Server level. My bad. I need to go here. So you first need to enable this, and then you can also set the periodic recurring scans and the advanced threat protection settings, and this will all report back into Security Center afterwards. So this is what you need to set on the level, and you can still fine-tune it on the database level. Also for storage, this works. So if I go to storage accounts, I only take mine, for instance. You can report back by just enabling this one advanced security thing, by enabling the settings here. So you then you can start monitoring your security from here out. So that's also a switch that you need to set. So by default, this will not be done on. So if you switch this on, all these features here will become enabled, and it will actually show you that it will report back into Security Center, and you will have a good overview there on how those things work. And then you get the recommendations too. So if I then go from here out to Security Center, it will report me back on my storage. instance, here. For instance, these have some recommendations. And also the threat management will be managed from there out. So it will both monitor and it will both react to the recommendations that it has. Cool. What else? What was there else that I wanted to show? I talked about that. Also for Cosmos DB, same thing. No, I need to do it here. And you will see that it looks exactly the same way as in SQL Server, so you get exactly the same features. So you have here the advanced security in preview now. You need to enable this, and then all will be fine, and then all the monitoring and the threat protection will be activated from there out. Now, reaction to mail is one thing, but you also have things like custom alerting that you can set. And this is where the log analytics part comes in. So you have actually a query that you can make over log analytics. You save that query as a Security Center custom alert, and then you build a flow on top of that. So you can easily just use the interaction of logic apps or even some functions if you want to interact with the API itself, you can even do those things. But by default, we have functions, we have logic apps out of the box. And then you can just say your own queries, like for instance, security event where this ID is being set. You create a custom rule alert, like you see here. You paste in your query there. You give the resources, you give it a good description, you set the severity for yourself. So if you know that there's one process that is really flaky, which is not being documented through our services, you can easily create it yourself. And then you actually just do something similar. So let's say, for instance, somebody masks a command by using WinRAR. It spoofs system file names with other executables. So it tries to do a brute force alert, first of all. Then it will show you some compromised credentials. And then the activity that you're doing, you can see the full stack back, and it will set up some suspicious traffic from internal use. That you can easily do when looking at some of the security events. You set a time generate, for instance. The cool thing about Custo is that it will give you intelligence on writing those queries, so it makes it a little bit easier. They changed it a lot over the course of time. And you can search for command lines where are the weaknesses can be found, that you think that all the things are being done. And then you put it back inside of the alert. And that way you can have an idea on process names, you can correlate all these data, and you can get a good overview of a custom alert, as you can see here. And where the process name is PowerShell, for instance, because that can also be used as a weakening system from within once somebody gets access. Sometimes you don't even see it. So let me just quickly demonstrate it. We go into log analytics. You will actually see that the log analytics part is, there's this thing called Security Center free, because it starts off that way. And security events, and where's the security event? I don't see the security events. Oh, here it is. Security event there was the one that we were talking about, so we can just do a security event where, and the time generated is, let's say, a bit more than 2 days. You'll see that it was a go. And let's take it on 2 days, for instance. Wow. So here we can start off by creating these queries. So this is not really that hard. There's a good guide on how to create those queries available on the documentation pages and on Microsoft Learn for also learning how to write these queries. But the most important thing is that you know which tables that you have available and where all the data is being stored. So you know that all the alerts are being pushed in here, what the protection status is, and these are actually reflected back from the APIs that you have available. And then you can just start doing the things that you want to do. So I can say a new alert rule from this one. And from there out, I can start creating my alerts. So it's just basically like you would do a monitor, standard monitor log alert. Yeah. But you need to make sure that you know all the fields and you're off for that. Okay, any questions on that? No? Still too early? Or? Not enough coffee? Okay. Let me check how I'm doing on time. What's the time? Because my seems like I still have 10, 15 minutes, or okay, good. Yeah, my watch is. Everything is acting funny today. Is it because of being up north that I'm close to the poles that all my devices are being funky? Yeah, probably. All right. Meet the little sister, Sentinel. So as you saw already, Security Center has a lot of features available. I'm going to talk a little bit more about Security Center in a second, but. One of the things we used to have in Security Center was the investigation feature. And I found that very cool because you can actually flow through all the different steps an attack has been generated by. But that's no longer there. That's all being moved now to Sentinel because that's more in an interactive way that they want to do this. And what is Sentinel? It's actually a SIEM. So it's a intelligent security analysis tool that can gather all different sources and look for patterns on top of those. So it's not totally the same as Security Center. It's an complementary thing that you need. And the thing is that it will also look at patterns over systems. So it will integrate with Office 365 natively. So from there out, you can easily see that if somebody accessed your VM by means of an Azure AD account, it will also show up on your Office 365 that this account has been compromised, that is being accessing personal information on SharePoint and all these things. Right. It's available since a couple of months now in the portal. It has great features, but also the thing is you don't have to worry about it. It scales automatically. It's fully service-based. You don't have to worry about underlying infrastructure because that's typically the thing. Yeah, we have a SIEM and we need more power to strive through the query, so we need to upgrade our service. This is totally managed for you. And it can handle a lot of data because just to give you an idea, there's some of the customers with more than 10 petabytes of data daily ingestion. So that's a lot of data that you can have. And it pre-wires with most of the third-party solutions, but also with all the Microsoft solutions, of course, as you know, with Azure, but also with Microsoft 365. And it has a standard log format output that you can put back to any of the other sources that you have. Under the hood, it looks a little bit like this. So it looks a little bit like Security Center from a architecture point of view. It also uses the log analytics and the security analytics from Security Center. But then it has actionable security recommendations again. But you can start doing hunting from there out. You can use notebooks and even notebooks from a Python, so data science way of working with it. Analytics. That you can let on to those things, and also these playbooks that you can have. Just to give you a quick view on what that thing is, where the combination comes from. So Sentinel. You don't have to start throwing me things, it doesn't work. Just to give you an idea, so you have all these data connectors that you have. As you can see here. Small, oh, no, that wasn't the intent. You can even connect it to Amazon if you want to. There's a connection with Azure Active Directory, and as you can see here, the gray ones aren't activated, the green ones are. And you see all the interactions with there. You can set workbooks on those things, and you can take queries on those, and this actually looks a little bit like, so there's some of the queries. You can set templates in there, and then from there out you can actually go looking at all the activity from a perspective. Let's say, for instance, I want to see all the running that is being done. These are just normal log analytics ones. But I actually wanted to show you something else. This one, no. Security Center, and this is where the hook comes from with Security Center. So if you look at the connector page, you configure it, you set up the way it works, so you can connect or disconnect an environment. And then from there, you can start creating incidents in, for instance, your ITSM environment. So, but it's not the goal to show you the entire thing of Sentinel, but what you can do in combination with Security Center. Some other interactions. There used to be, in the beginning, there was the Roam API built on top of Security Center, where you could interact all the alerts, where you could interact all the recommendations, where you can interact with all the things. Today, everything's being exposed to the Microsoft Security Graph, which is part of the Microsoft Graph system. So you need to use an application registration first in Active Directory. You need to have set up permissions from an administrator point of view. And then you can start ingesting and working with those API endpoints. You can either have delegated access or application access only. If you're not an administrator, you will fail to use these. Trust me, I tried. I tried to do it against our Microsoft thing, and as I mentioned yesterday to Thomas too, there was this thing that is not well documented, so we need to work on that thing. But for the minimum roles that you need. So you need to have consent of your administrator at first. What gets exposed, and that's the beauty of it, because if you want to write your own custom security dashboarding or your own custom security applications on top of it, you can just use any kind of services that you want to put on top. The data gets collected, and then you can expose them like to things like, no, you can collaborate together with things like Defender, and all the same data, all the data is coming out of the same API. There's connectors for there's a good set of documentation on the APIs, which you can have. As you can see there, there's a lot for Security Center, but also for what you can have, like patch alerting, get alerting, but there's a lot more. This is just a sample of the documentation pages. But there's also a Power BI connector that you can use immediately, and therefore, from there out you can generate reports. There's even a good sample on GitHub that you can use as a starting point. So I have this open here. This comes out of the box, so this is just a sample report based upon the API calls. So if you want to use the API from Power BI, it's very easy. Just go to get data and do more if you want to start off blank. And then you just type graph. And there you have the security graph, which then injects as a connector very easily. So you can use it within Power BI, but you can also use it in other tools, like, for instance, Power Platform. You can, in this report, you have an overview of all the security alerts that are being generated. And as you can see here, I push on yellow part, which is the Azure Security Center information. You will see all the different alerts that have been generated by Security Center here out. So you can, from there out, you can have a dashboarding very easily, some reporting. You can do some slicing and dicing on your environment, whether it's on on data, how the data is being exposed, and whether it's anonymous, yes or no. So all this data is being come out, and you can split them up in categories. So all these things can be read out very easily through the API. If you want to play along with it just from an API call perspective, you can also use the Graph Explorer. Where is it? Graph Explorer, here we are. Well, and the Graph Explorer interacts immediately with the API, with the Graph API. And there's already some samples in there that you can just use to take a look at how these things work. But they are easily adaptable. If you sign into your own environment, you can run against them. As you can see here, there's the all the security center alerts that you can call out. And this will give you back should be giving back that more earlier. That is the alerts. I have also alerts filtered by, I knew they had some more, filtered by status. So you get a nice JSON back that you can use and start consuming. As you can see, some of the traps here, like for instance, Palo Alto is setting back some security center alerting. The actions that you need to take are also being hit out. There's also some other defaults that you can set. There's also some post and some delete functionality that you can do, so you can set back API calls to and make actions on those things. One other interaction that we are foreseeing, or that is going to come, is Windows Admin Center integration. So from there out, you can start onboarding your VMs and also start looking at the security posture of your infrastructure, but that's not there yet. Then we still have some of the advanced features. I can't remember who talked about Bastion yesterday. Was it you? You were talking about Bastion yesterday, right? Yeah. So one of the cool things we have in Security Center is the hardening of your environments. And one of the things we can do is provide a just-in-time VM access. So you can either harden by means of a gateway that you have, or using Bastion and as a landing page, and from there out you go into the internals of your network and land in your VMs. But what if you also want to make sure that people are limited in the time and the location where they're coming from? You can actually onboard your VMs in just-in-time VM access. And from there out, you can, if I just take a look at my, it's in the recommended, still loading, come on. I just do recommended. From there out, you can say, I want to, if I want to go onto my VM and RDP into it, I want to make sure that I only have an access for maximum 3 hours, and only from this IP range or only from this IP client. So if I can easily enable them. And this will generate me a dynamic NSG rule inside of the environment where the NSG rules are being applied. So if you then take a look at how you want, if you want to use it, you just go like, hey, I want to request access. I want to enable only, let's say, the RDP port, only for my IP, and for a maximum of, let's say, 1 hour. I open the ports, and then the request is being sent. You can even send a request justification if you want to monitor on that one. So that way you have a small window of opening your VMs to the outside world. That's a very cool feature and a very useful one. Even in combination with Bastion, it works very nice because that way you have everything together. Another cool thing that you have is the adaptive network hardening. There's rules looking at the network capabilities of your VMs if you have them. And what it does, it will give you recommendations of eventual sources that are being put under stress on the networking perspective. It can be anything. Like for instance here, this is system-generated ML saying, destination port 5985, we all know that one. There's no alerts on this one, but it's a recommended rule. And if you take a look at this, you can just delete this, but you can enforce this rule, and this again will harden your NSG and add that rule inside of the NSG. I think we have another one here. This one, for instance. There's some more in here. Yeah, that's just, again for port 22. There's alerts on these, and then from there, these are then being generated by means of the alerts that it's getting on the number of interactions on the networking level. And of course, we also have the part of the file integrity monitoring, which is very nice. This will actually, if it's willing to load, monitor files that are vulnerable on your system, even onto the registry. So if there's a change there, this will generate alerts. You need to enable these on these system by means of the enabling them on the workspace, and you can actually see the total changes that are being committed onto a machine since the last time, and this will give you a log analytics pass again, and then you can either check whether, was it me, was it somebody else who did these changes. As you can see here, there was a registry key changed yesterday. Who did those things? In this case, it should have been me, or it was the system, because I changed some things deliberately, so that's okay. I'm not worrying about those things. But there's a removed registry set, so you get all this data back in a very nice way. And from there out, you can set alerts again if you want to. All right. So I think that brings me to the end of my presentation. I would like to say kiitos, or am I using the I too high? No. I hope you found it rather interesting. It's a very high-level overview, but at least I wanted you to touch everything which is in there. But feel free to come and talk to me about security on any level. There's even Carl here. Where's Carl anyway?
He had a couple of too many beers.
Oh, okay. So when he's after the lunch, you will probably see Carl. So if you want to talk about security, not only related to Security Center, but anything else, feel free. Is there any questions, by the way? No? That is typical Finnish. Okay. And then I say thank you, and maybe next year.